With the release of its first season late last month, it didn't take long for Squid Game to become one of the most popular drama thrillers of the year. Not at all surprising considering that twist ending which revealed it was Il-nam all along. But were there any hints to suggest this from the very beginning, and what prevented us from suspecting the old man? Well, stay tuned as we're about to jump right into it. Number 1. Was his number a giveaway? The very first hint viewers should have noticed is the fact that Il-nam was introduced as player number 001, showing that he was the very first player to be selected for the 2021 edition of the games. He even makes a big deal out of this when he introduces himself to Jin-hun in the first episode. Remember, Jin-hun was the last player to be chosen by the mysterious organization behind the games, allowing the two to have an immediate connection with one another. But that's not all. You see, when Hwang Jun-ho of the Seoul Police Department sneaks into the games and finds a listing of that year's players, we get another hint that Il-nam isn't all that he seems to be. The listing starts with player number 2 leaving the old man completely out of the registry. Makes sense considering how these records were compiled of by him. And what point would there be to include information on him which he already knows? This is a real blink and you might miss it situation though, so don't be too hard on yourself if you didn't end up catching it. Number 2, what were Il-nam's reason behind entering the games? Another noticed suspicion arose when Jin-hun confronted Il-nam about actually competing in the games. There was a massive difference between the old man and the rest of the competitors after all. Essentially, each and every player was in heavy debt and around about the same age. Il-nam, on the other hand, was an outlier in this regard. We also hear pretty early on that he has a tumor in his brain and that he could peg at any second. This would mean that winning the cash outright wouldn't have been in Il-nam's best interest. It's not like he would have the ability to enjoy the spoils of the game since his clock was about to stop ticking. That being said, this little tidbit of knowledge was given to the audience very early on in the show, at a point where nobody really knew that there was a huge mystery on the horizon. So when we finally came to learn that Il-nam was actually the one behind the games and was now competing with other players out of pure boredom, things started to make sense. No wonder he wasn't able to give Jin-hun any solid reasons for him being there. Otherwise, things would have been over before they had even begun. Number 3, why did the chosen games suit Il-nam? The showrunners also made a point of portraying Il-nam as a likable mastermind who just wanted to relive his childhood one last time before falling victim to his sickness. And as you can imagine, there were more than a few hidden clues spread out across the first season that pointed to this fact. Take a look at the walls of the sleeping area in episode 1 and you'll see quite a few symbols decorating the walls. These aren't very easy to see though, considering how the majority of them are obstructed from view because of the many bunk beds spread throughout the area. That being said, as the season continues and less beds are found within the area, the pictures decorating the walls become a lot more noticeable, and the eagle-eyed viewer would have seen that these pictures actually foreshadowed the various games that the players were going to have to get through to get their hands on the prize money. From red light, green light to the honeycomb game, everything was there for players to see from the very beginning. But more importantly, this showed that each game was chosen prior to the start of the deadly tournament. And we come to learn this a bit later when Jin-hun confronts Il-nam after winning the games. In fact, we discover that Il-nam was the one who chose the games in the first place in an attempt to relive a time where he and his friends would have the most fun. Rewatching the first season of Squid Game with this knowledge makes you notice a lot more than a few pictures though. Each and every game has been catered to the strengths of Il-nam and chosen specifically so that he can go back to the games when he was a kid. So it's really no wonder that he knew the most about these games, giving new meaning to his reminiscent attitude about how he used to play versions of them when he was just a little boy. His enjoyment of the first game is also a massive red flag, which is something we'll dive into next. But was Il-nam ever in any real danger, and how did he always make the right decision? Don't go anywhere because we're about to dive into it. Number 4, was Il-nam ever in any danger? Even if the mysterious old man was just enjoying the games he did in the past, the modifier of death through failure would have surely scared him into less enthusiastic, right? Well, as it turns out, Il-nam was never actually in any danger of failing. We see this when Jin Hon obtains the last marble from him in one of the games, resulting in the camera panning to obstruct our view of Il-nam before he's shot and killed by the game's enforcement squad. But as we realize later, there's a reason why the camera panned out of view. Il-nam was never actually shot by the squad and ended up being taken back to the real world where he could monitor and bet on the games as he did in the previous years. The fact that the showrunners never showed us Il-nam getting shot was a pretty big indication of the upcoming twist, especially considering how Gore wasn't exactly shied away from when it came to the rest of the show. But what if we told you that there was an indication of this as far back as the first game? Well, prepare to have your mind blown. Take a closer look at that creepy robot doll from the red light green light game. On quite a few occasions, we get to see things from its point of view, highlighting stopped players in the green and moving players in red. This information is then relayed to the snipers who take their time, eliminating all moving objects while the doll is turned. At one point, we see Il-nam though. He has a different appearance from the rest of the players on the field. You see, Il-nam isn't actually highlighted in green like everyone else on the field. In other words, the robot doll isn't scanning him at all, which makes sense considering how he is the mastermind behind the games. It thus makes absolute sense that Il-nam would be all smiles about making it to the end of the first game, despite everyone being shot around him. We also come to learn that he knows the song being sung by the robot doll off by heart, which clues him into when to stop just before it turns around and scans the players. A small hint can also be found just after Diok kills a player in the first time in the sleeping area. Knowing full well that he could have been taken out by the stronger players on the first night, Il-nam is found to be missing from his bed. We later see that he has climbed to the top of a selection of bunk beds and is screaming out for the madness to stop. How he ended up getting there in spite of his old age, we have no idea. Or at least we didn't at the time. But now that the show's ended, we know more. Il-nam's disappearance makes sense. He was the one who decided to start the riot in the first place by giving the players less food than they needed. So of course, he got out of there as soon as possible, and it wouldn't surprise us if he had helped making it to the top of those bunk beds as well. Number 5, how did Il-nam always make the right decision? Last but not least, Il-nam always seemed to know where he was going on with the games. When it came down to it, he was given the opportunity to choose between the umbrella and star during the honeycomb game. He chose to stick with the star since it was a lot easier to complete with the umbrella without snapping the heart and sugar. This is a choice that would have saved him if he was in danger in the first place. We also saw him sitting out when it comes to Game 4, which had an odd number of players with even number of groups being called for. What we didn't know at the time was that the player left out would be saved without having to compete at all. So of course, Il-nam did as little as possible to form a group with anyone. Remember the old man just sat in the corner seemingly okay about being eliminated for his lack of social skills? At the time, we thought he was just defeated. But knowing what we know now makes us see the move from a new perspective. What did you think about this new twist ending though? And did you see any of the hints before Il-nam was revealed as the mastermind?